The Carter Report presents Living Victoriously. Secrets of Success from Prime Minister Daniel of Babylon City with your host, John Carter.
I'm going to dedicate this program today to my atheist friends. The topic today is Living Victoriously, Part 7. We're going to talk about Antichrist is coming, but there's victory ahead. I want you to have a look at this. This was given to me some years ago when I was running meetings, lectures in the old Soviet Union, or it was just on the verge of collapsing. A colonel came to me. He came to this meeting, lots of other meetings like it. This colonel was just no ordinary Soviet colonel. He was actually in charge of teaching atheism, aggressive atheism, to the troops of the old Soviet Union. Can you believe it? The colonel in charge of atheistic propaganda. And after coming to this meeting, lots of other meetings, he gave me this crucifix that he had personally made. He gave it to me to put on my tie. I think it goes on something like this. I've kept it ever since as a wonderful memento because the colonel said to me, I was born and bred in atheism. He said, we were brought up to believe there was no Jesus, there was no God, and everything about the Bible and God and Christianity was all hocus pocus. He said this to me through the Russian translator. But he said, I've seen there's another side to the story. He said, I have become totally convinced, not by faith, but by the evidence that the Bible is true. And he said, I've given my life to God and to Christ. He said, I want you to take this. He said, I had this fashioned. Christ on the cross. I want you to keep it as a token of another atheist who came in out of the darkness, out of the cold, and came in to the light. Wonderful story. I want to say this to all my atheist friends, whom I very much appreciate. I like atheists for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons I like atheists is because they're talking about God all the time. So I like atheists. Atheists say to me, like Richard Dawkins has said on many occasions, I could never believe what you believe or what other people, Christians, believe, because it's simply, you've got faith. We've got science. We have the evidence. But I like to tell people this. We do not believe in faith in faith. We don't believe in faith in faith. We believe in faith in truth. And Jesus said, remember this, Jesus said, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free, you see. Now, I want you to take a copy of the Old Testament. I want you to come to the Jewish prophet Daniel, chapter 7 and verse 1. And I want my atheist friends, please, to indulge me and simply sit back today and listen with a little bit of patience, please. I want you to indulge me and look at the evidence, not at the faith. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. History tells us that this Daniel was a Jewish prophet from Jerusalem who was a captive of war. He was a refugee in the city of Babylon. And the Bible says He had visions from God. Now, my atheist friend will say, but that's absolute, as my Irish friends say, that's a lot of hooey. But I'm simply asking you to look at the evidence today, not to believe unless you are convinced. Consider the evidence like the colonel did. You be the judge. Because the question is this: who can tell the future? You can't. And I certainly cannot tell the future. Who can tell the future? We're going to turn to Isaiah chapter 46, verse 9 and 10. Book of Isaiah chapter 46 and verse 9 and 10. Isaiah the prophet says, remember the former things of old. For I am God and there is no other. I am God, there's none like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. The Bible is not like any other book in the world, my atheist friend, because the Bible, unlike any other book in the world, claims to have the ability to tell the future. Now today we're going to notice a prophecy that goes back 2,500 years. If what I tell you is true, then atheism is wrong, because there is a God in heaven. But just hold on for a moment. The Bible teaches that God made time. God is not in time. Time is in God. All scientists believe today, and I believe, in the point of creation that is called by scientists the Big Bang. Some Christian friends, and they're wrong, don't like the term the Big Bang. They say, this is some... No, it's got nothing to do with atheism. It's talking about the time when there was a Big Bang. We now know for a certainty that before the Big Bang, there was no such thing as time. Time came into being when the universe came into being, when we believe the universe was created. I want you to come over here to an interesting passage in Exodus chapter 3 and verses 1 down to 3. This goes back to a book that's about 3,500 years old, Exodus chapter 3. Now, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. So he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. Then Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush does not burn. So here is Moses, the prince from Egypt, one of the most sophisticated people in the history of the world. And he sees a bush, and the bush is blazing, and it's not consumed. And then he hears a voice. The voice says, Moses. Moses. He says, it's God. The voice says, take the shoes from off your feet, because the place on which you stand is holy ground. And then he talks to the being in the flaming bush, because the being claims to be God. And then the being reveals himself and actually tells his name. As you notice in verse 13 and 14, then Moses said to God, indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. What does it mean? It means that God has had no beginning and no ending. And as far as God is concerned, the future is as today. And that is why the Bible, as the book of God, claims to have the ability to see into the future. Don't turn off the television set. Please indulge me now and look at the evidence that the Bible tells the future. Daniel 7, 2 and 3. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. As Daniel is dreaming in the vision, he sees the sea lashed into fury, and then he sees four beasts that come up out of the foaming waters. Listen, this vision given 2,500 years ago claims to tell the history of the world. Don't turn me off. Indulge me. Simply look at the evidence. The future fate of nations are likened by these beasts, because in the Bible prophecy, a beast is symbolic of a great world power. Look at verse 17 of the same chapter. It says, those great beasts which are four kings which arise out of the earth. Verse 23, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, break it in pieces. Now, this is not strange. We have cartoons today. America symbolized by the eagle, Russia by the bear, and so forth. God in the scriptures and the prophecies is the great cartoonist who sees the end from the beginning. And he portrays the nations of the world as ravenous beasts, which is exactly what they are. Now look at Daniel 7, verses 4 to 7. And here it gets interesting. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off. It was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings like a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge hind teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now listen very carefully. This prophecy is given hundreds of years before Christ. And here you have these 4 great animals that represent indeed the kingdoms and the powers of the world, starting with the lion. And in Bible prophecy, every commentator agrees with me, the lion is symbolic of the kingdom of the Babylonians that ruled the world from around 605 to 538 BC. I have been to Babylon on more occasions than I can remember. On one occasion, I was placed under arrest by Saddam Hussein. I know that part of the world. And when you go to ancient Babylon, as I have done, you will see that the great symbol of the Babylonians was the lion. And so we start. Here is a starting point. We've got to nail that down. The starting point of the prophecy is the line, which is the kingdom of the Babylonians. This is not theology. Babylon is followed by the bear. And of course, we're not talking about the modern bear, which is Russia. We're talking about the bear that goes back thousands of years. And the rapacious bear symbolizes the great power that came after Babylon, and that is the power of Medo-Persia. This is not speculation. This is history. And after the bear came the leopard. And after Medo-Persia came Greece, led by the soldiers of Alexander the Great. And this leopard, which is tremendously fast, this leopard has 4 wings, and he has 4 heads that are symbolic of the breakup of the empire of Alexander the Great into the kingdoms of Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy. And this was written down long before Alexander was born. But then after Greece came another power, and that was the great monster or the dragon. So you have in history, my dear atheist friend, you have Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece under Alexander, the breakup of the Grecian Empire into the 4 states or the 4 parts of the old empire. And then you have, after Greece, the iron monarchy of Rome, the Rome of the Caesars. This is the power that destroyed the city of Jerusalem and that crushed the world and that put Jesus Christ on the cross. This is not speculation. A person who knows little of prophecy or history will say, you're simply making it up. You cannot make up Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And you may see in a few moments why the colonel became a Christian. Now look at Daniel 7 and verse 7 again. Verse 7. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, Rome, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge hind teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now notice this beast, the Roman beast, is different. He has 10 horns. Now notice verse 24 of the same chapter. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. The Bible says the 10 horns are 10 kings. Now, the Roman Empire, my friend, was not followed by another great world empire, as we would have expected. But the Roman Empire broke up into the kingdoms and the states of Europe. My atheist friend, if you are still listening, indulge me. Let me ask you the question. How did a Jew in Babylon, about 500 years before Christ, predict Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Alexander, the breakup of the Grecian Empire, the coming of the great iron monarchy of Rome, and the breakup of the Roman Empire into the kingdoms and the states of Europe? How did he know? That's why the Soviet colonel said to me, I have come to believe not because of blind faith, but because of the overwhelming facts of history. You see, Jesus said, you'll know the truth. Now, let me say a few words about atheism, and I say it in Christian charity. Atheism is not science. Whatever you're told, atheism is not science. Some of the best people I've known are atheists. But atheism is not science. Science cannot prove there is no God. No scientist who is worth his salt will say that he can prove there's no God. Atheism is intellectually barren. Atheism is a philosophy of naturalism. It is a religion of faith. Atheism is not based on proof. How can you prove there's no God? Have you been everywhere in the universe? It's not based on proof or facts. Atheism is not scientific, young people. And remember, many scientists believe in God. The man who wrote The Language of God, one of the greatest scientists of our age, is a believer. Atheism is a religion that people choose to believe, often for very emotional reasons. But true belief in God is based on evidence and facts. I do not believe in blind faith. I want you to hear this. When I was running lectures in St. Petersburg and Moscow and Gorky, we had tremendous crowds, millions of people. On one occasion, I had the KGB leaders come to the meetings. I remember saying that the KGB chief wanted to talk to me. They don't usually want to talk to a person like me to pass the time of day, usually to pull out your fingernails or something. But they brought the KGB general round to the back. I met with him and his colonels. Later on, I spoke on 2 occasions to all of the people in training to be KGB officers. And he said to me, don't forget us, because we atheists too have souls. He said, we're empty in here also. But he said, we are coming to your meetings because they're not like religious meetings. He said, we're coming to your meetings because you show us evidence why we should believe. And if we cannot give you evidence why you should believe, you know what you ought to do, don't you? Don't believe. But Jesus said, you'll know the truth. The truth will make you free. I believe in truth. Now look at Daniel 7 and verse 8. I was considering the horns of the kings of Europe, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. Now, this is the famous king who arises on the ruins of the Roman Empire. And remember this, the Roman Empire is still here today. The Roman Empire became a divided empire. And the old Roman Empire is still here today. We've even got buildings in America that are exact copies of the Roman buildings. The Roman Empire is still here. Look at verse 24. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. Now, here is the question. This is a very honest question from my heart to yours. How did this Jew, living 2,500 years ago, know there would be Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greece? The 4th one would be the most dreadful power, and then it would break up into the kingdoms of Europe, and then a king would arise in Europe, and he would rule the world. How did he know? if there's no God? Now, I warrant to tell you that most atheists, God bless them, have never heard this evidence. So don't be hard on them. In Daniel 7, 9, and 10. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000,000 ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated, and the books were open. I believe in God because of evidence. And this book says that God is still on his throne. And we'll be back with more amazing facts in a moment. Hello, friend. I'm John Carter. By the grace of God, I'm going back to Russia. I've been to the lands of the old Soviet Union 47 times. That's in the last 25, 26 years. We're planning to go to the city of Nizhny Novgorod, or the old Russian city of Gorky, made famous by the poet Gorky. We're going there because 25 years ago, we ran a great campaign in Nizhny Novgorod, and we saw 2,530 souls, 2,530 Russians, communists, atheists, all sorts of unbelief, baptized into Christ in the Volga River. We're going back because the need is enormous and because the Russians are saying, please come and help us. Freedom is disappearing in Putin's Russia. It's almost impossible now to hire an auditorium, almost impossible to preach the gospel. And so, by the grace of God, we are applying for special missionary visas. Are we going to get them? We think so, by the grace of God. And we're going to advertise, by the grace of God, on television and on radio. Please write to me. I've got to raise $250,000 now. Please write to me, John Carter, Post Office Box 1900, Thousand Oaks, California, 91358 in Australia. Write to the address now appearing on the screen. This could be Russia's last opportunity. Please write to me. I ask you, in the name of God, write to me today and pray for Russia. Thank you, and God bless you.
For a copy of today's program, please contact us at P.O. Box 1900, Thousand Oaks, California, 91358. Or in Australia, contact us at P.O. Box 861, Terrigal, New South Wales, 2260. This program is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you. We thank you for your continued support. May God richly bless you.